Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for joining us for Stars of Franchising.
Get ready for a roller coaster ride through the world of franchising as we bring you the best stories of inspiration and entrepreneurial grit and turning dreams into franchise realities.
That's right, Vini. From emerging to global brands, we'll chat with the genius minds behind the magic. All brought to you by the Tariq Farid Franchise Institute at Babson College. I'm Ab.
And I'm Vini. Now, buckle up for some serious inspiration.
Today, we welcome Joe Attia here to the Stars of Franchising. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Ab. Nice to be here.
Kind of a back to Babson for you, right?
Yeah, a little bit. It's nice to walk around campus.
Good to see you here. Really excited to have you. And we start with the question of what's your purpose and why, and what calls you to do what you do?
What's my purpose? Well, my real purpose is, taking care of my family. And what that's gotten me to is this point where I've been around the ringer a few times in business. So professionally, what I like to do now is try to pay it forward.
Yeah.
And so now I am doing exit strategy and value growth advising for business owners, and then also working on finding investments and opportunities to support my family.
And so you're helping entrepreneurs scale, right? Scale
Yeah.
and grow and ultimately exit.
Scale, grow, balance their business, and ultimately exit. Or if they're not exiting, make sure they're running a well-run business that's not burning them out.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your story and maybe your entry into franchising. You had a lot of different roles, and tell us a little bit about that and how it shaped what you're doing today, from an investment and a consulting leadership strategies.
Well, I got into franchising, I guess, sort of accidentally or sort of on purpose. My wife went and took a class at Orange Theory Fitness when it first opened here in Boston.
Okay.
She was looking for a workout, and she went and took the class. And I called her up that morning, and I asked her, well, how'd it go? And her response was, that class kicked my ass.
Yeah.
I signed up. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, that class kicked my ass. I am so out of shape. I've been working out 5 days a week all summer, and that class crushed me.
Yeah. She was a believer.
She was a believer. She's like, that's it. And by the way, we're going to open this in Natick. And I was like, oh, okay. And the funny thing about that was, I'm sort of got an anti-franchise bit to me where I've
Why?
I've talked to a lot of them.
Then you mean? Yeah.
Then and
okay.
sort of now.
Yeah, let's
as
talk
well.
about that. Yeah, what caused that, or what do because as we all know, and you know better than I do, there's good franchises, bad. It's not for everybody.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Well, the big thing that always struck me was whenever I was talking to the franchises, I'd looked at some franchises before.
Before that.
She had talked to me about this. And I couldn't figure out why I'd paid the royalty for a lot of the franchises. They would always say for the brand. And I was like, well, I'm going to be the brand locally.
Right.
Or I didn't know about you until I reached out to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
I could always see why the franchise fee, because you get the business in a box. And that's what's great about franchising.
The initial fee. Yep.
The initial fee. But the royalty was always a challenge. And she came out of this thing and she's like, we're doing this. I'm like, okay, whatever. And after a couple months, she was like a dog with a bone. She would just call the franchisor and just persistent. She got on the franchise calls, the intro calls, discovery calls. And then after a couple months of this, my wife is really good on the phone. We always joke about that. Yeah. And then she's like, they said we could have a franchise. Now what? Like, I guess I'm going into franchising.
Yeah. But one thing she did, it sounds like, which not many people do as much as they should, and we teach it and encourage it, is the due diligence up front. So tell us about that process, and how ultimately the two of you came to the conclusion that, and maybe it didn't, that it was worth the royalty or the box worked. I mean, she was a customer, but what did you learn, and how did you go about it?
Well, I learned a lot at that time. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I basically got into a unicorn of a franchise. Yeah. It was just the right place, right time. It was great.
Units at the time in the year, let's just back.
I think they were at 100 units. When I opened Natick in April, that was about the 200th unit open.
Wow.
And we were talking to them in September. They had just really started the... Yeah. They had basically been in like Arizona and Florida in the south, and now they're moving north in the northern region. So it was...
Early days.
Early days, yeah. For most, how many franchises get to 100 units?
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your experience prior to becoming that owner, because as you know, a lot of people, maybe many franchisees come from a corporate role, and you've had a lot of different roles. What was that like? And for you, what helped you? What brought you there? And then what would you share with potential franchisees that are coming from, they're not entrepreneurs or when they enter especially into franchising and what it comes with it?
Getting in. I'm sort of fortunate. I came up in an entrepreneur's household.
Okay.
My parents are immigrants, so we were a little more flexible.
What was the
way we were
business?
raised. My dad was a builder and developer.
Okay.
And then I worked with my brother. We started up a business and went through the global financial crisis. And then I went into management consulting.
Okay. So you were an entrepreneur before. Okay.
Yes, I was an entrepreneur. But
Yeah.
the big thing that helped me running the business was two things. The first thing was that just because of my training and education, I'm a pretty well-structured person. So spreadsheets are my life.
Yeah.
Data and digging into that. But the other thing that really helped me was I didn't think about this as a passive business. I was going into this full time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people going into franchising think. They're like, oh, I'll just do this on the side. And it's scary because most franchises and a lot of franchises sell them.
They
as being
do.
passive.
You're so right. It's turnkey, or I want it. And I say no.
Yeah.
We asked this question, and I think you just answered it, which is franchising entrepreneurship and the answer is yes, right? You're as you said, you're running the market, you're running the business, you're hiring the people.
Yeah.
Right. So I couldn't agree with you more. And how'd that first unit go? Like, were there things that you were sold or that you felt needed to be innovated or tweaked a little bit as you went from one unit to two when you got your arms around
In that
it?
model, I don't think it was being run really well and pretty
Yeah.
aggressively. I guess, how did it go? I could tell you this. I lost 20 pounds getting the business going, and that was before we even opened the gym.
That wasn't from working out?
No, that was just stress. I mean, it was a lot of work between hiring the team, learning the model, working in the construction of the build-out.
Yeah.
We were dealt with, this was January of 2015 was when we started this. So that was the 3 weeks of 33 inches of snow every weekend that we had here in Boston.
Yeah.
We were closed on Mondays. Just nothing ever went right. And this is another big thing. If you're going to be in business and an entrepreneur, you're always troubleshooting.
Yeah.
It was pretty tough, but we got open. We didn't have a huge launch like a lot of units do.
Right.
I'm not a marketing guy.
So more of a soft launch. Or soft
We opened with
grand
220 members. But for Orange Theory Fitness, that's on the low end. I mean, the
Yeah.
minimum number to open is 200 members.
And
when
break
they let
even's
you open.
probably 350 or 4,
It was
depending
about 400.
on okay, 400. Yeah.
So, but we never lost money. It was just you put your head down and just work your butt off. And I didn't know any better. I mean, that's the other thing is ignorance is just so
Right,
great. I mean,
right.
our first month of revenue, I think we generated $29,000 of revenue our first month, and it just went up every month from there.
Oh, that's great.
And the pre-sales model was just a great benefit to us, even though I didn't execute it as well as other people do.
Meaning you're signing up members, when the door opens, you've got that 200
Yeah.
and they're already paying. You got
Exactly.
revenue day one. That's really critical.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we see and I see is an underestimation of the capital required in that first year. And, of course, in the federal, the franchise disclosure document, you have the range, right? 200,000 to 600,000. What advice would you have in terms of planning for that? I usually, 20% extra, 3 months of, cash flow in addition to that. How do you handle that? Like, to make sure that because, the days and hours you're not open or you're overspending in that build out can really hurt.
Yeah. Build out management in these franchises and managing that really well and getting good contracts is really critical.
Yeah.
Having a good general contractor. Everyone's got stories about their build out and everything. Depending on the model, the pre-sales model really does make a difference in terms of hitting the ground running.
Right.
But with a lot of franchises, you really do, a lot of businesses, you really have to figure out how long you're going to be cash flow negative and really plan for that. And it's typically, 6 months to a year. And really, the way I thought about it was, I was cash flow negative for 6 months automatically because that was my build out time, and that was all ramp up time where you couldn't even generate any revenue.
That's a great way to look at it. It's not the day you open; it's you start. I love that.
Yeah.
Right, your ramp up time. From your perspective, and now I know you invest. Well, you've consulted in a lot of different industries. Now you invest, right, in different industries. From your perspective, Joe, what's compelling about the franchise model for scaling or for, success? Like, and then maybe some downsides for it or
Well, what's compelling is you have the structure, you have the business established, you have a back office. It really empowers you to get into a platform
yeah.
and learn how to get it going and avoid all the rookie mistakes most of the time.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing that's compelling. The downside of it is there are costs to it, and you've got to follow their model.
Yes.
I mean, one of the things that you've got to be wide open on is they're going to tell you what to do.
Yes.
And if you're not someone that can be told what to do, and I can't tell you again how many franchisees come to me and it's like, it's just a bad experience. They keep telling me what I have to do, what do I have to sell. I'm like, if you wanted to sell what you wanted to sell, then
why are you doing this?
why are you doing this? But having the business in a box and having that structure, having your marketing plan. I mean, again, when I got into Orange Theory Fitness, that first night, they sent me all their the operating manuals, and I just started scrolling down. It was step by step. This is how you get a unit open.
Yeah.
And it had pages of that. And it was just like follow this playbook.
And
it worked.
Yeah. We ask these questions, and I'll ask you in a little bit, but what are the best franchisees do and the best franchisors, right? And if the playbook works and it's successful and there are unit economics that are compelling, the best franchisees follow the model. Now, that's not to say that when we can talk about innovation later, but follow the model, you'll be successful.
Yes.
And every market's different. So from your perspective, whether it's Orange Theory or others you've seen, what do the best franchisors do? What do they like? Like what maybe I'm looking at 100-unit brand, 30, but what do the best franchisors do?
In my opinion, what the best franchisors do is they focus on their unit level economics and they make sure that the franchisees are profitable. Right. They put the franchisees ahead of the franchisor and then it benefits the franchisor. That's what they do. They are incessant about the profitability of the franchisees. Yeah. That's the best ones.
I couldn't agree with you more, right? And it's obsessive about it. And I've had several, including Tariq Fareed, founder of Edible Arrangements, Edible Brands, who've said, I love making millionaires. I love helping people create, generational wealth or economic and social impact for their families, where we circle back to your start there. What about franchisees? I mean, following the playbook, but what advice would you have for someone who's maybe didn't have any entrepreneurial background but's coming from a corporate role, or even maybe somebody younger? How do they be successful building the team? What worked for you?
Well, at the beginning, depending on, especially if you're younger, doing all the work.
Yeah.
You've got to learn how to run the business.
Everything.
Yeah. But that's only at the very beginning, because that's also going to be your Achilles heel, because what's going to kill you as a franchisee or a business owner is when you're doing everything. And you have to actually take that to the next level, which is learn how to be a leader and learn how to develop people and processes. The franchises are always great because they have most of the time they have processes built in, but you need to have your own processes. And they're not, one thing that franchisors cannot do and should never do is tell you how to actually operate your business internally on a day-to-day basis, or else you become just an extension of their business.
Yes.
So you have to know how to set up your internal operations. Like we had checklists for our opening and closing checklists.
For your stores,
for my stores.
Yeah, I love it.
This is exactly what we do. Our sales process, there was a checklist for everything was checklist oriented from, again, my training, which I was really fortunate about, but it's like following these processes and then getting the team to do that. And then once you learn how to run the business and you've done it all and you're really in the business, because that passive business really doesn't exist, it is then building that culture to be able to institute all of that process orientation and that work to build whatever the value add is for your location, whether it's excellent food, whether it's excellent culture, whether it's making sure the grass grows.
Well, you focused on that process, right, and your own playbook for your team, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your and your wife's original intentions for scaling, what you wanted to create. What did you sign a multi-store development agreement?
No, I was afraid to.
Okay, tell us about that. So there are 100 units. Many times, well, they were new. You were the first or second in Boston. Second in Boston.
First franchisee, the first one was the area rep.
So did they want you to sign There was an area rep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Orange Theory had the area rep model. When I got into
That's
Kid
right.
Strong, they did the area developer model, which is a little different. I wanted to do multiple units, but I was afraid to commit the money and the time.
Up front.
Yeah,
Okay.
up front.
And then what changed or what happened? Because you ended up owning how many units?
Of Orange Theory, I only had two.
Two, okay.
I wanted to have four,
Yeah.
and I tried to stage that. And then what I learned was when I got my second unit, I wanted to get my third and fourth unit signed on, and those units were sold out from underneath me.
In your contiguous, in an area next to you, which
Yeah.
made sense for you to manage.
Yeah.
And that's really important, right? Which is that the franchisor's interest and maybe yours and your decision to not open one South Shore or whatever that you didn't satisfy it. Wow, that's.
But that point is really key, but where the franchisor's incentives and the franchisee's incentives aren't necessarily aligned. You've got to really find that franchisor that is aligned with the franchisees, but their incentives are really truly to open more units as fast as possible.
Right.
And you want to find the one that it's open more units and profitable units. And that's where, going through the franchise disclosure document, understanding the item 19 is pretty valuable.
Yeah. Oh, you couldn't be so spot on, right? The franchisor, you mentioned it. Royalty off top line revenue. Every store that does $1 million, they get 5 to 7, whatever the percentage is. So they're incented to scale fast and get more royalties. Whereas as the owner, you're focused on the bottom line, right? You commit that capital. So there's that. We like to say there's a healthy tension, like a muscle, but they do have to want you to be successful and want the unit economics to work. At least the great ones.
They absolutely do. It is funny because I always joke that the franchisor gets paid before the government.
Yeah, they do. They actually do. So now you've had some experience with other brands too, correct? Tell us about that and or what your thinking is now on franchise brands.
I had Orange Theory was my first one. When I couldn't grow, I was looking for a complementary brand. Did the research, signed on with another brand, and then ended up backing out once I signed my franchise agreement, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Because that's when you actually get the real data, and I realized this is going to be a lot harder business than it looked like from the franchise disclosure document.
Wow.
The margins weren't there the way you thought, and you had to be much bigger to the inventory costs were just way too high.
Yeah.
And I thought my idea there was if I couldn't grow the business I was in, I would find a complementary business.
Right.
So I actually ended up not moving forward to that one, and then but I'd learned what I wanted out of franchising. Outside of the unit level economics that you're looking for, the things I'm looking for is what's the value I'm going to get for the royalty?
Yeah.
What's the network benefit of the franchise?
Other franchisees.
Other franchisees, not just the brand, because that's what they're always going to tell you. Programming that they're going to give you, and so I was looking around for something, and I ended up getting into another brand called Kid Strong, and I did that for 6 years.
How'd that go?
It went well. I learned from Orange Theory, so instead of just buying one license there, what I did is I went all in. I bought a large territory to try to protect my flanks.
Right.
And I actually bought 3 regions and went down that path. Bringing in, and what I learned also was my whole idea there was building that business to sell from day one. The whole idea was to get, how I can get out. When I did my first franchise, I got in just to run the business. I didn't even think about how I was going to get out. This time, that was the plan, so I brought in an operating partner.
Right.
From the day-to-day, they would do the heavy lifting. I would do all the strategic work.
This. I learned this from Steven Spinelli, co-founder of Jiffy Lube, our president here at Babson, that plan your exit day one.
Yes.
Right? Let's talk a little bit about that. How did you learn that, and then what advice would you give to, you obviously you mentioned having an operating partner, but even if I don't have an operating partner, how do I start to think about an exit?
How do you think about it? You think about where you want to go, what you want to get to, and
metrics
and
for
plan
that, right?
backwards. Metrics and plan backwards. And then everything you do is to get yourself to there. And I think that's the important part, going back to what we were talking about. When you first start a business and a franchise, you really need to be in that business to really understand what's the drivers in that business. Yeah. But the plan has got to be, how do I get out of it myself so that it can be transferable? Because that way you can bring somebody and say they can get it. Because, the way I always look at it when I'm consulting with my clients is, is it transferable? Is it sustainable? Mm-hmm. And is it predictable? Yeah. And you want to create those 3 situations in the business. And what you do with that was with the culture, the training, creating your lead regional managers, and getting them to teach each other. So once you get that to start going, now you have a business, not a job.
Yeah, yeah. Now for Kid Strong, What was the size of the store development agreement that you signed, and where'd you end up?
We signed a 7-store agreement for the Boston market,
Gotcha.
and then a few months later I signed a 6-store agreement for New Hampshire and Maine, and then the following year I signed a 6-store agreement for the Detroit area.
Okay, and where did that end up? Like, how?
I ended up opening 7 units,
Yeah.
and we were there at a very interesting time because I got in with them super, super early. They had all the dynamics
Yeah.
and the structure that I liked, but when I signed on with them, they only had 9 open units.
Okay.
And then we went into the pandemic.
Yes.
So, I'm sorry, they had 8 open units. The 9th one opened in September 2020 because we had that 6-month lull where they couldn't do anything. So I got in there really early. When we opened Natick, we were the 20th store open for that brand.
So let's explore that a little bit. First, your first experience, and I love how you've leveraged what you learned in that experience. Because I would imagine you wouldn't have flipped. Meaning you started with a 100-unit brand and go to 7. So you knew, you learned,
Yeah.
right? What was it? How did you get comfortable that, that you were getting what you paid for this 8 units? And we tell people, I teach, don't expect the same thing if you're a Dunkin' franchisee with thousands of units as a franchisor. But so how did you manage expectations? I mean, you must have had gone in with the expectation that there were certain things they weren't able to provide at 9 units or however. Well,
Yeah.
tell us about that, and how did you get the confidence to jump in at an early brand like that?
So how did I go in with my eyes wide open?
Yeah.
The due diligence, spent a lot of time talking to the founders of the brand, talking to all the franchisees that were operating right now, what the good and the bad was, what they were doing, and how they were changing. I mean, one of the great things about getting into that brand, or what that brand was doing, was they were planning ahead as well, and they had actually learned from other franchises. So they were basically, when they were at 8 to 10 units, they were thinking about being built like a 50 to 100 unit building. The technology that they brought in much
support
earlier
disease.
than other brands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when I got into Orange Theory Fitness, they had just released their own heart rate monitor system. And the OT Beat system is a really key part of that, but they were using somebody else's model. Well, KidStrong learned from that, and they were putting up their programming from the very start.
I love it.
So when we first opened, we had everything up on screens, and the coaches that were coaching the classes, they just had to follow the script.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I wanted, is I just wanted to be able to have that script set, so that was the menu for our programming. They were building out their headquarters for a larger team.
Support team and
And it did have its challenges. I mean, we went through some tough times, as any business does, because the growth goes. And, especially with a young franchise with that sort of ambition, like we said, they were pushing to open units.
Yeah.
And we needed to scale that back at one point because the profitability wasn't going, because we had marketing problems with the brand. And it's how do you manage that tension? And you have that. And it's like they worked through that struggle as a brand, and we got that resolved. But it was a bit of a learning curve. But how do you do it? You have to have your eyes wide open and be prepared to work. And the biggest thing was we worked our butts off.
Yeah. And you said it. It's that transparency, right, Joe? The communication back and forth, right? Hey, this isn't working. Let's change it. And the great franchisors, and we talk a lot about this here at Babson, and is like you said they did, build ahead for 100 stores. Maybe not entirely, but I think a lot of times emerging franchisors underestimate what they need to scale. So at 100 units, you're not making enough off royalties to really be making a lot of money. Yeah. But a lot of early franchisors don't realize that. So that's an important lesson, right? When you're evaluating a franchisor, is what's their tech stack? What is their support like when you're in? And then as a growth franchisor, I always like to say, invest ahead of the curve a little bit, right? So that you can really support your franchisees. Now, you talked about the exit, right? And I think I know the answer, but let us tell us, and one of the beautiful things about franchising, I feel, and we talk about with investors, is there's a secondary market, right? Yeah. There's buyers, there's investors, there's existing franchisee bases. So tell us about your exits in the 2 brands. Who are the buyers, and what is it about franchising that may or may not help, exit planning from your perspective?
With the first brand, the buyer was, we ended up having a lot of PE money coming into the brand. Yeah. And so one of the large PEs came in and acquired me, and they had 50 units at the time. Yeah. And they're the ones that took over, and they actually bought the entire region at the time. When I did it with KidStrong, what I ended up doing was I ended up selling to other franchisees because the PE money hadn't come in yet.
Gotcha.
So I was looking to get out for whatever my reasons were and our exit. We structured it, talked to some of the other franchisees, and I just sort of built it myself. So the first one was through an M&A advisor, and second one was me doing it myself. But there was a lot of learning in both of those things.
Yes. You point to a trend we've seen, 20, 25, 30 years ago, there wasn't a lot of private equity investing in franchisor brands. That trend took off. And then as you stated, and I financed a lot of these transactions, private equity into franchisees.
Yes.
Right? So that's a great point, which in you're evaluating the brands and looking at it, there's sellers, and they invest in whoever your buyer was. The private equity invested in them to grow.
Yes.
So so that's a great avenue that you have, for buyers.
Yeah.
Right? And then to your point, on a system that may not have private equity, KidStrong, you probably know all the franchisees, you help each other, you share, and you've got buyers that don't need to do a lot of due diligence on the brand.
Yep.
Brilliant.
And then you always run up against buffers, right? Because what ended up happening was franchisees wanted to expand, but they couldn't expand near them. So the way they could expand was buying another territory. And what I had learned also was I was very fortunate going through the first time. I didn't set myself up right. Like, for instance, a simple thing in my leases. I had personal guarantees and landlord approval of any new one taken over the business. So the landlord got involved in the transaction. So I learned in my second go around is all my leases, they were automatic transfers. The landlord was out of the picture.
Great.
So we were structured to be able to sell
faster
and cleaner, because I can't tell you. In fact, I got very lucky when I did Orange Theory Fitness. When I talked to some of the owners, I sold in December 2019. So there were a lot of franchisees who were selling in January, February.
Yeah.
They actually didn't end up selling because when things got glitchy during the sales process and everything shut down. The pandemic hit in March, and the buyers walked away.
Yeah.
There was nothing holding them to it. So being structured so you can have a quick sale and an efficient sale is really, really important, was what I figured out through that transaction with Orange Theory Fitness. And so we were structured. We had all our processes documented. We had clean books. We had all the key personnel in place. We had job descriptions. We were just set up for it to be more efficient and effective, which has also made it great because a buyer could come in, another franchisee, and we already had the team in place.
Yeah. And that's so critical, planning ahead for that, because as someone recently told me, time kills all deals, right?
Yeah.
And so that, and I know timing's everything, but your sale, but if you wouldn't have been able to act quickly, the deal probably would have dragged into the pandemic, and then all bets are off, right?
Yeah. It was all, it was so many franchisees. I mean, it was a crazy time, right? But there was nothing worse than when you think you have your business sold, you've already exited in your mind. You're out of it.
Yeah.
And to think that you're going to have a transaction and then one day find out it's not there, that was very tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, I know, I'm sure. And let's talk about innovation. You've been in several systems, and some of the best ideas, and innovations with franchise brands come from the franchisees. Talk a little bit about that, the empowerment to tweak some things in your local market. Have you worked with franchisors that would say, hey, I saw it in the pandemic lending to Orange Theory Fitness franchisees, which, certain the franchisees would talk, and someone said, hey, I can now get by with one store manager per 3 stores. So what did you see, and what did you experience, and is there a place for innovation from franchisees in some respect?
Yes, there is a place for innovation with franchisees, and it really also depends where your model is. When you're getting in with a brand early, probably your first 50 to 100 units, they actually need the franchisees to be innovative and think a little bit. And when you get in after 100, you really need to follow the model.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't mean that there's not room for any innovation, because as you see things when you're in your operations, you can take that up to the franchisor and say, hey, we sort of experienced this opportunity with Orange Theory and KidStrong. One of the things we learned is putting a salesperson in place to be able to go out and do group events.
Yeah.
So that was a big opportunity. We were all membership based, and everything was one-on-one. And being able to bring these companies in or parties made a really big difference for us. And that was
franchisee.
That was the franchisee pushing that to the franchisor.
I love it. Let's circle back to private equity and what you saw as a seller, and in a system that had a lot of private equity. Orange Theory does. Planet Fitness, I think 12 or 13 of their largest franchisees, multi-unit franchisees, are owned by private equity. What do you think, Joe? What's attractive about franchising for private equity, or what did you see?
For private equity?
Yeah, as an investor, put your investor hat on or their hat on. Like, what did?
It's the business in a box.
Yeah.
It's structured. It's built up. You've got a platform. It's a platform business, and then the benefit to the private equity is that they can acquire more units that are all similar and the same, and it's that cookie cutter approach. Once they figure it out, they can replicate it over and over again. So they don't have to continue to try to be innovative or how to like build a team. They
Just
can
white space.
It becomes a cookie cutter for them.
Got you. What do you? How do you approach decision making as an owner when the opportunities are uncertain? Like, what advice do you give to owners who are trying to make a decision about an opportunity in their business or making that decision? I mean, what's some of the advice
I always
you give?
try to structure it around some sort of model, some sort of thinking model, whether I'm putting it into a spreadsheet and looking at the numbers or some conceptual framework. I think like one of the things I learned running these businesses, and because you get into a lot of these businesses, whether it's a restaurant, a fitness studio, or a retail store, you have a lot of people interacting a lot, and your team is really working together.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was taught was the 5M model. So that was the whole thing I always talk to people. It's model, mentor, monitor, motivate, and multiply. Those are your 5 M's as a leader.
Yeah.
And I've talked to, just had a conversation last week and was talking to an owner, and they were struggling with their managers at their business, but they had never modeled the business for the manager. They just told the manager what to do. I'm like, you can't do that. It's sort of like trying to teach a child to walk.
Yeah.
You can't just say walk.
Explain it.
You need to actually show them how to walk, which is what they do, and then you take them by the hand and you mentor them, and then you watch them walk.
Yeah.
You put your hands up. And that's what I learned a lot in franchise and running a business with these teams is you need to do it for your team. You need to show them what you want done, but you need to get out of that stage and let them do it and let them fail and learn how to do it. And then it's the motivation to multiply after you start monitoring them to make sure they're doing it. And that's the leadership part. You're monitoring it, now you're running the business.
Yeah.
The motivation is giving them the reasons why we do it, whether it's the why you do it or you give them bonuses, some financial thing.
Yeah.
Multiplies is the kicker. Now they're doing it for each other. Now they're going back and they're implementing the first 4 M's to the team.
That's great.
And they're modeling for each other and developing that as a culture. But to answer your question, it is going back to your problem and figuring out some framework to simplify it. Because when you just try to resolve it, it's always scattered, it's unstructured, and trying to put it in a structure that is resolvable, and then getting to a conclusion. And it doesn't necessarily have to be right, but it's getting everybody on board and just going in the same direction.
And you're developing people and leadership and allowing yourself to somewhat step away, but also make sure that they're equipped to really follow your playbook for your stores and in the business.
And that is.
And did you share your goals to the business with the team? Like, hey, here's where we're trying to get as a team.
I didn't at the beginning, but I learned that was an important thing, is setting those benchmarks and those metrics, because that was the other part, is when you're doing this right, you get to the point where you learn that delegation isn't about getting work off of your plate.
Yeah.
Delegation is about teaching your people. And if you're just delegating to get rid of work, you're not going to get anywhere. And giving them that motivation but explaining, here's what we want to get to.
Right.
We want to open more units. We want to generate the revenue. We want to get to a certain membership level. Opens up a lot of opportunities. But yes, absolutely. I learned that is an important part to develop the team.
Well, and I'm sure I saw this with a lot of the franchisees I worked with. You may have a front desk person that maybe she aspires to be a territory manager or man of multiple stores. So you're providing that opportunity for them to get to the next level, right?
Or you can do it the way I did it. And I had one of the girls that started with me. She was actually in high school when she started with me. And I always told her I had bigger plans than she knew that she had for herself. And she ended up being one of our managers at Kid Strong 8 years later.
That's great.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if she's an owner someday, if she's not already, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I love that model. Let's talk a little bit about industry trends and outlook. I mean, just in franchising or other, what trends are you seeing in the next for the next 5-10 years? What or opportunities as you evaluate from an investor standpoint?
Well, I think the obvious one is what's the impact of AI in every business and who's implementing that well, correctly, and in a good way. I think that's a really big challenge because it's so young right now,
Yes.
and it is impacting everything, and it can't be implemented the way a lot of people think.
Right.
I think that's one thing. But also in relation to that, I see the big thing that's coming is what is now AI proof.
Yeah.
So getting into the services,
Yes.
anything that's physical, people-facing businesses
Yeah.
are really, really key. And I think that's a trend that we're going. So as you've seen everything go more technology-based, I think there's going to be a big human factor that's going to be incorporated into a lot of opportunities for businesses.
I think you're right. It's evaluating that brand or the company. How are they using AI? You're exactly right. I'm seeing a lot with franchisors that are using it to streamline and simplify their franchisee sales process or lead generation. So that's really critical, and also the trend in home services, B2B services businesses. I think in many businesses you still need the customer experience.
Yes.
Right. So not to lose sight of that. There's a great point.
And finding the brands that know what their value add is.
Yeah.
If you're going to make you got to figure out where your value add is for your customers and make sure you really focus on that and really get that right. You can't think that it should be about efficiency when it's really about experience. And if it's about efficiency, it can't be experience.
Yes.
You've got to really know what your play is for your customers.
And stay true to it, right?
Yes.
I was with and heard from one of the founders and leaders of Dogtopia, I may have mentioned, and he talked about this flywheel, right? And we're about the pet experience, the pet owner experience. Stay true to that. And I was really impressed how they were trying to drive that from the organization into the franchisees, because at the end of the day, that's their value proposition.
It is. If you just
and experience.
CEO of Orange Theory said this at one of our conferences, and this is one of the things that's always stuck with me. He's like, and if you make it about the money, you won't make any money.
Was that back when David Long was CEO?
David Long was the one
I
that
think
said
you're
that.
exactly right. It's Tariq Farid tells the story. His mother told him, if you keep chasing the dollar, you're never going to catch it.
Yeah.
But focus on the customer and the experience and your franchisees. I love that. Well, let's go to some closing questions. We talked a little bit about maybe a view you had entering about franchising. Can you share another misconception about franchising that may help our listeners?
Another misconception.
Or a misconception, you talked about, turnkey, but, they're not having
no such thing as turnkey. There's no such thing as passive. Just because units are open and the business is going doesn't mean you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
Don't think that you're not going to be there working, even if it is a quote unquote passive business somehow. You've got to be involved. Don't underestimate how much money and time it's going to take to get involved in the business, especially if you're opening the units new.
Yeah.
You have a better idea if you're acquiring, and then you can get trained.
Yeah.
Big conception, and just because it was successful yesterday doesn't mean it'll be successful tomorrow.
That's so true.
I mean, that's the world is changing so fast.
Yeah.
Seen that in whether it's fitness, whether it's food.
Sure. Orange Theory experienced it, right?
Yeah.
Post-pandemic, and then even after, and franchisee selection. That's so true. And not every market's the same, right?
100%. I always tell people this, like, if I were trying to get into Dunkin', I would have taken a Dunkin' anywhere in the Northeast or Florida, because Florida is basically just a transplant of the Northeast.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have opened one in Arizona. I wouldn't have wanted to do that.
And that's exactly what they did. When they first started, they had some missteps. We looked at developing a bunch in Ohio, and when they went west, you're exactly right, Joe, because out east,
It's
in
the
the
culture.
Northeast, it's 60-70% beverage versus food. And when they moved west, it was less than 50%, and the franchisees struggled out of the gate. So that's so true, because the margins were so different. So let's talk about building enterprise value. As you coach about, exit strategy, what do you see that's missing from entrepreneurs about creating enterprise value, or even do they know what it is?
What's missing? It's missing the fundamentals. Owners end up running their businesses, and I think the easiest thing that owners miss is they think revenue, and that'll get profits. But revenue, just chasing revenue, is not the way to run a business. You need to run the business effectively, and that changes. And you can either think about it one of two ways when you run your business. Is it an income business or is it an equity business?
Yeah.
And if you're going to be an equity business and you want to build the wealth of this business, it's not about just how much cash you generate from the business on a daily basis. It's how effective is it.
Right.
And when you think about that, the big picture items are how dependent is the business on the owner?
Right.
What's the key employee risk? What are the key dependencies there? Is it diversified? Are they trained well? Do you have customer concentration? What's your process documentation? What's your lease arrangements?
Right.
Those sorts of things all set up the company so that for the same revenue, it's actually worth more because it's not even just the same revenue and the same. It can be the same profit down to the bottom line, but because it's a better, well-run business, it's actually worth more if you go to exit the business.
And that's for any type of business industry. I love it because 2 to 3 points on food cost. At least that's 12% of revenue versus 10%, right?
Yeah.
But then I like how you wrap it up with, is the business well run, well documented, customer concentration risk? Those are things that should be thought of early too, right?
Yes, 100%.
As how not only what is my exit or could look like, but what does the business and the team need to look like? I love that you had a packaged business that investors could look at and say, okay, wow, he's got a head of HR, this person doing here. That's such great advice. With advice, what advice would you give somebody entering franchising today as a new franchisee, or launching a franchise brand?
Well, if you're looking to get into franchising, the advice is learn what an FDD is, do your due diligence, talk to owners, talk to the good ones and the bad ones.
So the franchisor is going to give me the good ones, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And are franchisees willing to talk, have you found?
Yes, they are so willing to talk. They are so willing to talk. Both sides. The ones that have had a bad experience are willing to talk, and the ones that have a great experience. And the great thing is learning what you need to do to be successful in the brand. Yeah. And how the support you get from the franchisor, and find the franchisor and the brand that matches up with your philosophy of life.
I love the first part and that last part, right? What's your purpose? Why? Or just, is it important to be in health and wellness because you love health and wellness, or not? Or do you want to be in food? And then how are they running their business, and does it align with your values? I love it. Let's get back to the due diligence, because you mentioned the franchise disclosure document, FDD. Earlier you mentioned the item 19. For our listeners, share a little bit about, and we teach this in our franchising course here, what's in the FDD, what is item 19, and do they list all the franchisees?
Not all the time.
No, not all the time.
Not all the time.
Okay.
Every franchise
They should.
They should. If you're looking at a franchise, you want to look at a franchise that has the most open franchise FDD possible. It's very clear and has a lot of information.
They're not all created equal. That's a great point, right? Some have more than others.
Yeah, some will actually tell you, just here's our average store. Other franchise disclosure documents, they'll break them into quartiles.
Yeah.
Other ones will actually tell you what's going on with all the stores. So how much detail can you get? What's going on? What are the lawsuits that are happening against the franchisor?
Yeah.
Look at the median stores. Look at the big stores and the small stores. What's that dispersion? Get that information. If you can get the profitability. A lot of times they won't show profitability in the franchise disclosure documents for stores, because the profitability is really dictated at the unit level, not the franchisor level.
Right.
Is the way some of them look at it.
And you can find that out from franchisees too.
Yes.
And even, customer count outside of a location, things like that. You're so right, and I love the lawsuits are required to be in there, litigation. The other one that we love to look at is units sold, opened and closed, right?
Yeah.
So
Huge.
A lot of brands got into trouble, right, with Quiznos Subs, for example, selling hundreds of units, but then they're not opening. That's a red flag, right, Joe?
It's a huge red flag, and I don't know why that is such a popular strategy by franchisors. Is
sell.
1,000 licenses sold, 1,000 units sold, but only 50 open.
Yeah. So that's a red flag.
Huge red flag.
Well, this has been awesome discussion, Joe. Let's end with, for you, what does success mean now in what you're doing on the consulting side and the investing and how you're helping others?
Success for me now is working with other business owners and helping pay it forward, teaching them what I've gone through and helping them balance their business and their lives, so that not only can they run their business that they're in well right now, but when they get to their next act in life, that they're prepared for that. Because the other thing is, so many business owners, you work so hard running your business that when that disappears, you don't know what to do. And it's really, you do need to plan for that.
I love it. Yeah. What's next? Many times, when when the baby grows up, or so to speak, learns how to walk and then run. This has been so much fun. How do our listeners find you? Your company, or what you're doing, or you have a website, or how should we?
Yeah, my company, I do the exit strategy and growth value consulting, is Accelerated Equity Advisors. The website is xeadvisors.com. You can reach out to me there. I'm also on LinkedIn at Joseph Attia. LinkedIn, reach out to me there as well.
Great. Well, we loved having you, and I love the title, Accelerated Equity. Who doesn't like accelerated equity?
Exactly.
This has been great. Welcome back to Babson, and love to have you with in front of our students. And best wishes to you, Joe.
No, thank you. This was a great time.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Stars of Franchising.
Stars of Franchising was produced at Babson College, engineered by Travis Gray. Karen Soa is our guest coordinator, and music by Ralph Taylor.
If you like Stars of Franchising, be sure to review us wherever you get your podcasts, and spread the word and share these stories any way you can.